All right.
Is that better?
No.
Morena koutou, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's Kaipara District Council Externally Funded Projects Committee meeting. We are joining you in this Zoom room here. We're not meeting in person today, and elected members are in various parts of the country today and are having may have interesting technical problems or challenges here with the Zoom connections. But please bear with us as we proceed with this Externally Funded Projects Committee meeting today. So at this point, I'm going to open with a karakia. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapu pounamu te moana, hei hua rahi mā tātou i te rangi nei, araha atu, araha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa. Thank you. So at this point, I'm calling for apologies for today's meeting, and we have an apology from Councillor Larson and an apology from Councillor Joyce Paki, and all the other elected members are present digitally here. Nice timing. Good morning, Councillor Vincent. So the other elected members, as you can see, are on the screen now. So so we have we certainly have a quorum for today's meeting. So I'd like to move the apologies of Councillor Larson and Councillor Joyce Paki be approved and received and approved. Thank you, Councillor Curnow, for seconding that. Is there any commentary on this? Putting this to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Confirmation of the agenda, item number 1.3 for today. There is an agenda which has been circulated for this meeting, and it's very clear and straightforward. I'm seeking someone to move the confirmation of that agenda, please. Councillor Aaron Wilson-Collins, thank you, and Councillor Wills for seconding that. All right, thank you. Is there any commentary regarding the confirmation of the agenda? No commentary. Thank you. We're putting this to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to item number 1.4, the conflict of interest declaration. Are there any conflicts of interest, elected members, regarding any of these items? Councillor Wills.
The cycleway.
So that's item number 3.
Recorded on it's officially recorded on the council website.
Thank you. Item number 3, the Kaihu Valley Trail project update. Thank you. Are there any further conflicts of interest to be declared? None. Thank you. Thank you. Right. We'll move on with this point into the content of today's meeting, with the first of the items being the confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting on Wednesday, the 22nd of June. So these minutes are distributed here, and I'm seeking someone to move them. Councillor Wilson-Collins there, moving these as a true and accurate record. No, you're not. No. Councillor Vincent, sorry, it's just you had your hand up there. Councillor Vincent, thank you. And this was a meeting at which people came and went, I would say. So, Councillor Vincent, you were there for the duration of the meeting, yes?
No, I actually did step out briefly once or twice, so it probably would be better if I didn't.
So it can't be you. Sorry, thank you. Yes. Councillor Curnow, you were there right through. Councillor Weather, you were there right through, yes?
Yes, that's right.
Yes, very good. Okay, right. So Councillor Curnow will move these as a true and accurate record, and Councillor Weathy is happy to second these as a true and accurate record. It's very interesting when people come and go. They can't be part of that decision about them being what really happened. So is there any commentary about these minutes? No commentary? All right, thank you. So we're putting this to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. There's the minutes of the last meeting approved. Thank you. So we're moving on now to the first of our substantive projects for today for the Externally Funded Projects Committee meeting, which is the Kaihu Valley Trail project update. And for this item, we're about to be joined by Greg Monteith, but I am seeking someone to move the noting of this report. I will do that, and I'm seeking a seconder here. Councillor Delavaris Woodcock, thank you. Thank you. Greg, Morena.
Morena, thank you, Worship. KVT, I'll take the report as read. Not much to update in terms of additional from what's in the report. Only to note really maybe that progress is probably a little bit slower than what we envisaged the last couple of weeks, just with the weather we're having in SP4 and SP5. I think initially we had sort of estimated we'd be out of there by the end of July. That's probably now going to be more maybe into the start of August, a couple of weeks into there before we finish. So, but it is starting to dry out, or was starting to dry out, the guys are saying. So we're starting to get a bit more progress in there. Ahikiwi Bridge, again, we're going through the design with that, and it's progressing well. And the team are currently as well looking at options now for the additional bridges and how we procure that, and the best way to procure that and what are their options with that. So working through that at the moment. The consultation is continuing with landowners as we progress, and that will continue on just as long as we've got money for the funding and progressing. So we'll continue those discussions and engagements with the landowners and carry on with that. But that's where we are. So I was happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So the questions for clarification here. We'll go to Councillor Delavaris Woodcock and then Councillor Vincent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Greg. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Thank you for turning off your camera.
Okay. My question is about the last month's meeting. I requested if we could have some maps that show the difference between the railway track, conceding Mr. Mayor's point that it is no longer a rail trail but a valley trail. Nevertheless, and I would like to see that for transparency and just to see how the project, particularly in separable portions 4 and 5, is it 1 and 2? I get them mixed up. The portions that are up by the Donnelly's end. Would be interesting to see where they diverge from the rail track. And then the second point, which I requested, was to have the report amended where it says final alignment, seeing that it's a work in progress, and over time there could be ways to get the off-road portion increased for safety and for scenic advantage. Those are my questions. Thank you.
We are currently just working on that and putting the maps together, just of where it sits and what the land parcels are with that. So hopefully by next meeting, we will have that for the committee. There's a bit of work in that. It's just where the rail card is, what is road corridor, what is river, what is on road. So we are currently sort of just looking at that and trying to put those plans together with that. Apologies, I thought we had sort of taken the names off the report for the interim and the final report, but again we will have to sort of rectify that if that's not the case.
Thank you. That's no further questions.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just turning to the top of report page 4 or page 11 of the agenda. When I first came on the council, one of my objectives was to see Dargwall declared as a motorhome friendly town, and I've met with singular lack of success in that regard. However, I see that amongst the community engagement processes, there's to be a meeting with the New Zealand Motorhome Organisation regarding Kaipara as a destination during off-peak season. Could that be the opportunity to pursue that objective to the benefit of the local area? I think one thing that might need attending to is the requirement for a free dump station that people can have access to without charge, and potable water alongside it. So from my investigations anyway. So that's something I just wonder, is that something that you might be able to consider as part of your brief?
I think in terms of that engagement with the Motorhome Association was one to, I suppose, just have the conversation, and part of this whole engagement is one, making people aware of it, to future-proof, I suppose, and trying to encourage future tourism coming into the area, but also then that engagement of just what it is, what facilities they do need, and is there opportunities with that. So I don't know, we'll certainly be having the conversation with them of just about parking facilities, camper facilities, those sort of things of what they may require. But whether we can bring them into this funding round or whether that gets actually put into the business case that we're putting together to try and make sure that we are future-proofing the track in it and making it of a facility that will encourage as many people as possible. That's where I imagine it will most likely lie if it was dump stations or parking facilities or other like.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because it is an opportunity there to perhaps use Dargle as a staging post or a leaping off point for engaging in the trail experience. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? No further questions. All right. Thank you. Greg, you may stand down for a moment. Thank you. So we're over to statements now. This project is working its way forward. It's certainly highly complicated and complex with many players and many moving parts. But the progress that is being made is really very good to see. And I'm looking forward to further actions and completions and milestones being met as winter turns into spring. So carrying on with this, and good luck with the ongoing discussions regarding the sensitive aspects of this location. Thank you. Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My statement is it's great to see the photo updates and in particular the fencing portion being done, and that is one of the enjoyable parts of this project, is that even though there are challenges, it seems to be progressing step by step, or you know, that's a good phrase to use, step by step. We'll get there in the end. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there further statements from elected members here? No further statements? Lovely, lovely. All right, so we're putting this item to the vote now regarding the noting of the Kaihu Valley Trail project update. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Greg. So we're moving on now to the second item for today, the Mangawhai Shared Path Project update. Councillor Wethy is moving this item, the noting of this item, and I'm seeking a seconder here for this. Councillor Curnow, thank you. Seconding this. Greg, back to you.
Thank you, Roger. Yeah, again, just take the report as read. There's not much updates additional to what's written on there. I think we're, just to verbalise it, we are just obviously finishing off phase one. I think we're pretty much done there. It's just a few tidy up bits we have to do, and some defects we have to sort out in terms of the pavement on the road. I'm working through the details of that with the contractor of when we can do that and what that repair looks like and fix looks like. We are continuing now. We've awarded, I believe, the phase 3 of the works, which maybe isn't reported in here, but the design of phase 3 is underway. So that's been awarded, I believe. So that's underway, which is good. Phase 2 of the works, I think we're just about to award that contract. I think we've got approval from council. So I don't know if the letter's actually gone out, but we're certainly just in the throes of that and securing that contractor. With that, I suppose the timing of that again with the program, I suppose we're looking maybe to start now in I think it was October this year on phase 2. I think we'd sort of initially talked about pushing it out to it might have to be after January, but we're looking that we could stage the project and actually start some physical works, get part of the retaining walls done north of the creek, coming down towards the boardwalk, which keeps us well out of the ferry turn area, which we're permitted to do. That would then allow us to then demobilize, I suppose, for over Christmas period, and then come back in the new year and start on this other section of work back towards the ferry turn area, just to try and progress the works a wee bit quicker. And minimize that disruption of it all happening at once, sort of spread it out a bit. It might be a slightly longer program, but possibly less disruption as well for the public at those really busy times as well, which is what we're trying to achieve. But apart from that, I think we're finishing off the parts of the path on Leicester down to from the Art Gallery to Leicester Street. I think it's pretty much completed now. I think we've got approval now, and we've worked out the price to do the park section, and Tim's just working with the contractors of a program on that of exactly when they will get in to start that. But that's just imminent. That will start any day now. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Look, I've got a first question for you before we go to Councillor Kerner and Councillor Weddy. I am confused where you've mentioned here in your verbal update just now about moving on to phase 3 of the project.
Yeah.
And so looking in the written report, I don't see a description of phase 3 of the project. So could you just
phase 1
make
and
it clear to us, if nothing else, because I'm a simple soul, where on the map phase 3 is? Yeah.
Phase 1, sorry, I'll just go down to that now. Phase 1 and phase 2 are obviously in this report because they're linked to the MB funding and the external funding, hence reporting in here. Phase 3 then is obviously just going to be NCTA and local council funding. So obviously it doesn't come into the reporting of the externally funded projects within that. But I suppose it is still part of the wider picture. And I suppose I just wanted to maybe just highlight that we are continuing, and we do, when we got the approval for the funding from NZTA in terms of phase 2, and it was for phase 3 as well. So phase 1 obviously is what you see in the map as the yellow sections that we've done. Phase 2 is obviously the lilac, the 7, 8, 9, which is the boardwalk crossing. Phase 3 then is the green sections, including Wood Street. So what we're doing, I suppose, is we've let a professional services contract to undertake the design of phase 3, which is the green sections in there and the Wood Street section as well.
So for those who don't have that map open in front of them, so that's literally the piece from the roundabout in on the centre of Mangawhai village,
Moya Street,
and Moya Street, all the way past Mangawhai Central, all the way to Mangawhai Central, that goat track piece, yeah,
to Mangawhai Central,
that everyone refers to it as the goat track.
Yeah.
So that piece you're talking about, and then also at the top of Mangawhai Community Park, across the top of the golf course, and down to Wood Street and through the Wood Street area and so on. Yes,
that's
right.
Yeah.
Both of that. Sorry, just I'm a bit COVID brain today. So both of those are, in your terminology, are phase 3 of the work that's being proposed here, and they will be being done as business as usual, but not being reported to the externally funded projects committee, because they're just using normal run-of-the-mill money, which is our kaipara contribution plus waka kotahi.
Yes, that's correct.
So I just explain all that just so that I'm clear, that we're all clear, that you're clear, that we're all clear. Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. That's resolved in my head. Thank you. I hope that's helpful for others as well. But look, it's a quick statement is that's very encouraging. Thank you. Councillor Curnow, then Councillor Withy. Questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to go back onto the broken up part of Molesworth Drive and what exactly is happening and when, or is it impossible to tell, because it really is creating quite a lot of disruption, and you know, driving past it, you wonder how we're going to fix that, or is it going to have to wait until the summer? Yeah, just exactly what is the plan for that?
Yeah, Tim's currently working with the contractor at the moment. He's expecting their proposal of what their solution is to amend that. And when I talked to him yesterday, it was expected today, to be able to work through and look at those options. I suppose where we have to sit is they have to present an option to us that we're happy with, and we approve in terms of one they can actually build that, and it's going to stand and meet the standards and the quality that we require. Obviously working in winter makes it very difficult for them to go back and chip seal and do those sort of things. So it's saying, well, actually, that's not okay for us to leave it for such a long period. How are you going to open that road up and make it work? And if that's something temporary that you have to do to make it work and then come back possibly, or can you go in and put asphalt down, or what options are there that you can bring back to the table and present to us? So so Tim's expecting that, well, maybe hasn't got it ready today. And then he'll be working with our asset team and Andy Brown of just saying, well, are we happy with those sort of long-term solutions that they're proposing? And working through that detail. So yeah, we are conscious of that. It is something we do need to address very quickly, because it is a main arterial route that we want to get opening and working. But we just want to make sure that what we're doing is correct and fit for purpose.
Right. Okay. And convenience to the community comes into that discussion, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. We need that road. Yeah. Open
Yeah,
up again, and with not having to go back every couple of weeks to fix potholes or put traffic management in it. It's got to be something substantial that, if it is a temporary fix to get them out of winter, that it holds up to get them out of winter, and then they come back after the fact. Or if there's something that they can do now in terms of more expensive option, but obviously at their cost, then that's something we're looking at as well.
Okay, great. And then I just have one other question, if that's all right, Mr. Mayor. The path through the park, this is now the third meeting that I've been told that path is about to start.
Yeah.
Do we have a guarantee that it's about to start, or are we going to have another next month it's about to start as well?
It's taken a little bit longer, I think, initially, because we put it as a variation to the existing contract that we've got, and we were working through the prices with that, and I suppose our project managers weren't solely happy with some of the initial prices coming in, so there's been backwards and flow of I suppose scrutinizing rates and quantities and what's coming in, to making sure that we're reasonably happy with the price. And I think there's been toing and froing in that, which has taken substantially longer than we had envisaged initially. We're at the point now where I just signed the contract scope change to put that up for GM approval, and then obviously to CE approval, just to include that in the contract. So yeah, so that's now going through the process, and we're just, once we've got that, then obviously we will carry on and award.
So when you say once we've got that, we'll get on with it, is that likely to be within the next couple of weeks, or yeah?
Yeah, I would hope so. Yeah, so it's I will come back with a definite date following this meeting, and email out response just with the minutes of exactly when our establishment of that site will be.
Great. Okay, because yeah, there are sort of planting activities and things like that are starting to happen as well. So I just want to make sure that we're coordinating all of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Withy. Question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Greg, I've got a couple of questions. You've answered sort of one of them, or the third one, which was why can't we get on with the next stage on either side of the bridge and shorten up the overall time? And obviously that's what you're going to do. So I'm very pleased to hear that's the plan. Were you going to say something? Or someone else?
Oh, Yeah, no, that was, we were just obviously when we put out the initial dates and the timing of that, I think we were initially concerned just about costs of establishing and disestablishing with the contractor, what that would look like if we started early and then they had to disestablish and go away. But Tim's been able to work through with the contractors and they've come up with the program and they're happy. So it's not costing us any additional costs for them to go in and how they've structured the program. And I think that's where our concerns was like when we wanted them to establish, we wanted them to get on and do the work and not have additional costs coming in for that. But no, it's now looking at, that we're happy with the program, happy that it's within the costs and happy that it's how we can manage the disruption to the public.
Okay, thanks. Now, the second thing, you remember last meeting, I was concerned about the width of the path in front of Mangawhai Central. What was about to be, it had all been laid out and was about to be concreted. Now, I just wanted to check that it was the same width as the path as it ran down Molesworth Drive from Wood Street end. Tim's certainly come back and said, yes, he's actually physically measured it. It's 3.5 meters, which is the same as the path that's already been laid. Apart from a few meters where it's crimped down to 3 meters because of obstructions around the side. However, the 3 meters still easily complies with the Waka Kotahi specifications for a shared path, so there's no problem there. But my concern is here, in your map, you've got a yellow section 10, which is the Mangawhai Central development in front of that. Now, I'm just not sure. I'm not sure that represents what they will actually be doing, because judging by what they're currently framed up for the path, they're well shy of that, and their boundary comes in at the Gumdiggers track entrance. And the way you've displayed it on that map, it would suggest that they would be responsible for the path right up to the entrance, the southern entrance of the bridge when it's constructed. Now, I'm not sure that's a true representation of what they're going to be doing, and I'd just like confirmation one way or the other of that.
I would have to come back and get the true extents of from A to B of where that sits, but we can certainly do that and give exact details of where they're doing their section. And I am aware we're currently having discussions with Mangawhai Central, exactly what you're talking about in terms of the path width and what that looks like, and if it's non-complying in certain sections and how they're going to rectify that. Because I suppose from our perspective, very much contractually, they were required to do the 3.5. Obviously,
can I help there, Greg? Look, well, I've been back to the contract, and they're doing the right length and the right width. So we may have been short in the beginning in specifying the right length, but they're doing what they're contracted to do.
But Sue, does that mean that, is that a fair representation on the map that you've got in the paper here, that what they're contracted to do goes right up to the southern end of the bridge when it's constructed?
No, it won't. They're doing, I can't remember the length, but I've spoken to Tim about it, and he's checked that they have actually marked out the correct length of what we had in the contract. And I did have a discussion about whether we wanted them to do more. You know, obviously there'd have to be a variation to the contract. And he said, no, he'd pick it up in the next the next phase.
Okay, fine. Well, Greg, you may want to amend that map for the next meeting to more correctly represent what they will be doing, because it will mean that we, as part of the lilac colour, will extend further south than it's currently represented on the map.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent, question for clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm just referring to, it's depicted in one of the photos there, the area in front of the library in Moya Street that's just recently been sealed. In fact, looked rather lumpy. Is that intended to be used for parking along there? Because I know there used to be angle parking in that space, and I'm just wondering what the intentions are for the future there.
Yes, I understand that parking will be reinstated there.
But it would be what, parallel parking rather than angle parking, I presume.
I'd have to double check with that. I'm not 100% sure. Sorry.
Because there would have implications for the number of. I mean, it's a busy area, so Yeah, I just was wondering what the long-term consequences would be there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? No further questions. All right. Thank you, Greg. Thank you for the work that's going on here, and thanks to Tim Manning again for his project management in this space and for keeping it rolling along. Statements, Councillor Withy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, no, the project has to some extent, from the community's viewpoint, slowed down somewhat because of the disruption that Councillor Kernow's already mentioned along Molesworth Drive. And I might add that, you know, United Civil certainly got a lot of brownie points for what they did early in the project, but they're losing a few of those right now because the disruption is quite significant. And I kid you not, I was absolutely amazed. At one stage, the day before last, the pile up of traffic in front of the traffic lights that are controlling the flow through that area went all the way on the northern side right back to Everline Street, which was hundreds and hundreds of meters, and that was the same on the southern end. Now that's not even in a busy time in Mangawhai, so you know we've got to get somewhere to improve that, or all the goodwill that we're generating is going to evaporate because people only will take a certain amount of disruption, and there doesn't seem to be anything happening in that area. So hopefully Tim's going to have some good news today from the contractors and they can get some relief there for the community. But apart from that, I'm very pleased to hear that things are progressing on the next stage around the bridge. Even though we can't start the bridge construction, it'll be good to see something progressing there. The activities of the community up and down the path are increasing. I see people out there every day, basically walking, cycling, push chairs and what have you. So it's getting used. And the trouble is right now, of course, they can only use a portion and then it evaporates and there's nothing there. So the more we can be seen by the community as pushing towards a completion, the better it will be for everyone. And I'm sure everyone's aware of that, and certainly the project team and Tim's been working very hard to get that as completed as quickly as possible. So keep up the good work, and I'm sure that we'll get a lot of the community very much on our side if we can get that completed as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Curnow is the seconder here. Your statement, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to echo their sentiments. This is one of the more significant projects the council's ever been involved with for the Mangawhai community, and the work that has been done is really impressive. But what I'm comforted today hearing is that while it does feel a little bit like it's kind of stopped just a couple of strides short of the finish line, that there is actually ongoing work in the background behind the scenes in order to try and get across that particular stage of the finish line, and then quite a lot of work going on around the design of the next stages and being flexible around phasing those implementations, so we're not sort of looking at it as this is how it must be and this is the only way it can be, that the officers are looking at how can we be creative and get, you know, a sort of rolling wall of implementation going on. So I do want to thank the officers for their creative work in this space and encourage them to keep the pressure on and keep things moving, because this is, in my experience of a lot of project management, this last 10% is the hardest part of the project to actually get it completely over the line, as opposed to almost there, we can kind of live with it. So really encourage us to get across that final line on each of these stages, but I'm sure the officers are in the same space as that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further statements from elected members here? A quick statement from me. I'm really delighted by the pragmatic response, Greg, to the if you like, to the fact that the piling cannot take place for the special new bridge, but due to the fairy turn breeding season. So I think it's really great that council is saying, well, here's the other bits that we can do for that part around the piling part and the construction of the actual bridge. And that pragmatic response, I think, is a hallmark of a really good project management team that's trying to keep the wheels rolling and keep the overall project moving, rather than going, oh, that's it, everyone down tools, go away for 6 months and we'll pick it up again. But instead to go, no, let's forge on, and there are still ways through this. So I congratulate the team for all of the work that's going on here. And based on the momentum and the direction of travel for this work, I see the entire project being completed all the way, with the shared path working certainly between Wood Street and to the domain being completed within the next 18 months. I'm very, very buoyed by what I'm seeing here, and noting that bridge project that's there's the bridge, the piling of the bridge is going to be in early 2023, but that the bits around the edges will continue being done, so that will then quickly land. I think it's very, very exciting. It's a huge transformation, as Councillor Curnow has just said, this significant project for Mangawhai town. So well done to the project team here. Thank you. Are there any further statements? Councillor Weddy, a closing statement if you would choose to take one.
No, I'm fine. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. That's all from me. Okay,
thank you. Right, so we're putting the noting of this report to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, moving on. Still with Greg, we're moving on to the Unsealed Roading Network project update. I'm happy to move this item, and a seconder here, Councillor De La Varas Woodcock. Thank you. Greg.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, take the report as read again. Not much to report on this one. I think last month we updated that we'd pretty much finished the physical works. I suppose now the report is just following on to clarify that and to show where we've landed. I think we were always reporting with Bernard a month behind, really. So the works, yeah, we've uptaken the full PGF funding, completed all the works that we had sort of in that program associated with the funding, and yeah, we obviously will now just carry on as business as usual with the heavy metaling program that we've got within the LTP. But yeah, happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So are there questions for clarification? Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess just as this program has matured, I just want to go back to the beginning, I suppose, in a way. Greg, can you explain to me the origins of the Page Green process in terms of its application to Northland conditions? I suppose, to give you context, I'm concerned about some of the good work getting unravelled in a relatively short time, and I was wondering, I get the general idea of the approach with a high clay content basically being baked in with some aggregate to provide a hard enough crust that the water would run off. But I've seen instances where it seems to be opening up. So was wondering, was this tested under Northland conditions before we got to try it?
Yep, it was. With KDC, I did with Bernard and the team. A number of years back, they have been working on doing various trials with different blends and different options, including the Page Green, which is just, again, it's just a blending envelope of the amount of fines that sit within that. They tried a number of different options, I think, through that process prior to my time at KDC. But and obviously what they'd found and what came out with the trials and the testing of that was that the Page Green did work very well within the environment of Northland. It was the preferred option going forward. So it certainly has been and done as trials and tests to get us to this point. Obviously, there's elements that go with the whole grading of that, of the shape of the road, the drainage, and the various elements that come into actually upgrading these roads that are part of the PGF funding with that, to ensure that, one, we are getting the 6% crossfall, we are getting the drainage upgraded as well, and we are protecting that investment as best we can as we go through. And that forms part of now business as usual, whereas we maybe hadn't been as I suppose as strict with those upgrades within that, to try and protect that investment, maybe historically. But it's certainly now it's fit for purpose, definitely the page green. But that we're seeing that, and we're seeing the benefits of that. Granted, there may be obviously little parts that do open up, but when we look at the volume of the metal going down and the quality and the checks that go in, there will be occasions, I suppose, that a pothole will turn up here or there, but that's something we just have to deal with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent. Your hand is still raised. Oh, no, thank you. Right. Councillor Wilson-Collins, thank you. Question for clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Greg. I've just got a question in regards, and I feel like I might have asked this already, but my brain's a bit of a sieve at the moment. Just in regards to moving forward now. So we've done this project. It's really amazing. And so much good feedback. Like, I love this one. It's just wonderful for our district. Moving forward, without the PGF funding, how do we keep that level of service?
I think what the PGF funding, what that allowed us to do was bring the network up to a level that we could. So it gave us that injection of funds to bring it to something that's manageable for us and sort of the roading department and the budgets that we've got. So now that we have had that big injection that has lifted the whole level of service of the road, now that we can go in and carry on just going round and keeping on top of it now, so I think. So it's a big case of obviously those significant upgrades in terms of maybe the shape and the metal running in, the structural pavement being upgraded, the wearing course on top. So now for us, I suppose it's just as we see with all unsealed roads, you have a certain amount of gravel loss every year, sort of thing. So we sort of calculate that, and we sort of know then going forward how much we need to be coming back in and when we need to replenish those wearing courses on top to maintain that level of service. So I think we're reasonably comfortable now that the budgets that we've got and that's fitted into our asset management plans and our LTPs looking forward, that we'll be able to carry on and move around on those roads and keep that level of service.
Okay, yeah, just going on from Councillor Vincent's comment, yeah, I've seen, and I think it was one of the trial roads actually, which has stood up for a really long time, but now it's kind of falling apart. And so will those roads get re-looked at, or?
Yeah, if they are starting to deteriorate, then something our inspectors will be looking at and raising with the maintenance team. And then one is like, why are they deteriorating, or why there's defects on that, and when was it done, and is it expected to last longer than that? And sort of looking at those options of investigating it. So we're certainly driving the network as we do as normally on a regular basis, going around and picking those up. So and once it is picked up, then the maintenance team should be then through Bernard, I suppose, looking to say, well, why? And delving into that.
Yeah, so just to be very clear, it's not going to be a case of we've got these shiny new roads and then in 12 months, 24 years, it's all potholed and...
No, the intent is, I suppose, that we've had that investment to bring it up to where we can manage, and now we just keep it at that level of service and going around to being able to maintain it. Keeping in mind that unsealed roads are just, by definition, they deteriorate, and so they're continuously sort of moving and changing with that sort of thing, and hence why we've got the maintenance contracts to go along and spot those things and try and intervene with those defects to protect the asset.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A question from me quickly, Greg, and it's exactly along the lines of Councillor Wilson-Collins' question just prior. Would it be possible for there to be a council briefing be put together which actually simply says, here's the state of the nation of our Kaipara roads now versus where they were before this investment, before this project? How much better are our roads? How have we shifted the dial? Because in this externally funded projects committee item in this project, we see some of the mechanisms and tools that have been applied, but what we don't get is that picture that you've just been describing to us in words of actually, so what does all of this mean for our Kaipara people and the people traveling on our roads? Because we're now at the end of this project, and we set out as a council to go, here's a really bold intervention that's required because we had a need for fixing a significant problem with our unsealed road network. So in the sense of now being at the end of this journey, how do we go, look, this is what we've done. You can see now this and this and this that have stepped. And so you actually, rather than go, well, here's everything we did, it's actually more, here's what it means, and here's where we are now. This is the new level, which goes back to Councillor Wilson-Collins's point, if you like. Would that be possible, do you think, to put together a briefing along an item along those lines so that we can communicate clearly to the Kaipara community that the PGF money's over, there's a new method which will continue inside business as usual, but here's the step change that has been made and what that means?
Yep. No, I can certainly catch up with Bernard and Andy and put something together and bring that back to council. I won't commit to a date in which council, but hopefully in the next couple of months we could have a paper up to council.
Thank you. I think that would be really great because, I'd like to acknowledge, the work of Bernard and Andy in this and their long view from prior to this PGF money, where they were in these roles, if you like, and have led us into this and right through it and out safely out the other end. So certainly acknowledging them and saying with that institutional memory that council has here inside the NTA, how to capture that across the complete arc of the project. Yeah. That would be grand. Thank you. Councillor Vincent, your hand is up again, and then we'll go to Councillor Curnow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, just to be quite sure, Councillor Aaron may have already asked a question, but I'd just like to make quite sure. So that as part of our business as usual program, is it right that we will continue to use this page green method of rehabilitation?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that will be our heavy metalling program that we'll go around and we'll follow the same process of going in and rehabilitating these unsealed roads and bringing them up and looking at the drainage and getting the shape right and bringing in the page green. Okay,
because you used the term heavy metalling and I was a little bit uncertain then as that might have been referring back to a previous methodology. Excuse me. But thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Curnow.
Yeah, I just sort of delving in a little bit more into the new methodology and the sort of, I guess the sort of methodology for what kind of ongoing monitoring do we have? Is it just the normal maintenance sort of checks, or do we have a particular way of saying these are the page green roads and we have a special way of looking at them and monitoring to see, just to identify if there are particular conditions where it doesn't work as well, or so that we can identify that as opposed to losing this kind of special methodology into the sort of ordinary mix of everything. I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but just like a special monitoring on these roads.
Well, with how we record our information on our roads and our databases of that, it's all recorded in our RAM databases of what treatment we've put on those roads, when it was done. So we've got all that information, historical sort of as-built and data that we collect, and that the roading inspectors have on their tablets and able to access when they're out in the road. So when they're out and looking at it, they know all the history of what's happened to that road, when it was done, and the methodologies that we've used and the construction techniques that we've used. So it's all there. So we will know obviously which roads we've done and which roads we're carrying on with that and which roads haven't. And obviously they'll be able to see visually what that looks like as well. So yeah, we do have that. There may not be the same extent in terms of the monitoring of what we've done historically of when we're doing the testing of the GPR ground radar. that we've done sort of thing to look at the modelling and the degradation of how the gravel loss works and the expected sort of gravel loss of that, and looking at the depths. That might not be to the same extent, but we certainly will be monitoring and carrying on to some extent. Yeah.
Okay, so the data's there, but what I'm hearing is that there may not be any sort of specific page green monitoring program, sort of, where, I don't know, once a quarter you look at all the page green roads and say, are there any particular issues that are coming up that we maybe weren't expecting and are now seeing that, I don't know, if you do this on sandy soils, that there's something that's starting to happen there. I'm just looking for, sometimes these things take a wee while to kind of creep through and to become visible.
That would certainly just happen on a business as usual. So we do, the guys do drive these roads every specific time. The contractors are doing the audits on the roads, so it's so that would just fall into business as usual. So obviously we know the roads we've treated, we know then obviously the expectation of what we expect from these roads, and then obviously we can have that conversation and say, well, actually did it or didn't, and in certain areas, if there's this issues, like exactly what you're saying, if it was built in the wrong material or the wrong place, or we've certainly got that information, and we can have those conversations, and that would come into it. So we certainly agile enough and being able to look at that and respond to those things, and continuously monitoring and
Thank you. You just used the exact word I was looking for, agile enough. So that gives me comfort that there is an agile thinking in here. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification from elected members? No further questions. All right. Thank you, Greg. Thank you. So statements here. So opening statement from me. Look, this is very, very proud, actually, of Kaipara District Council getting to the end of this important project, which is one of our Kaipara Kickstart Provincial Growth Fund funded projects. We went out and asked government for a very bold amount of money to support Kaipara's Unsealed road network to the fingers of the peninsulas of the district and all across the district, which is actually the lifeblood of our district's economy. And through the Provincial Growth Fund now, Kanoa, they stepped up and provided us with $8,060,000 in order to work on our Unsealed roading network. And so to be at the end of this project now and have basically through this externally funded projects committee observed green lights on our project management the entire way through this project. This has been a very, very smoothly run project. And so while both the output has happened on the ground, also internally for our systems as a part of a roading company, Kaipara District Council has done really well here. Because what through our work and our courageous pitch for this money, Kaipara was able to establish inside the Northern Transportation Alliance a centre of excellence for Unsealed road network management and upgrades, which is the first of its kind in New Zealand. And so the quality of the project management here has been excellent, and I would say that Kaipara would not have been able to take on the scale of work that is represented inside this project had it not been part of the Northern Transportation Alliance. So I'd just like to acknowledge those project managers and the leads who have gone before in this work, including Kurt Martin, Bernard Peterson, Andy Brown, Tim Ward, and AJ Rudsdale, as well as Greg Monteith, who's reporting to us here, all of whom and many more inside the project teams, including all the many, many contractors, including local Kaipara businesses who have benefited from this work, in addition to the larger contractors in Ventia. And so the huge range of people who have benefited from this and contributed to this and have dropped their shoulder, if you like, and leaned into making this project really work. I'd just like to applaud and congratulate everyone for that, and am very, very thankful for for the work that's happened for our Unsealed road network. Of course, the work is never completed. The roads are never finished, insofar as they are always a work in progress, and they are our biggest issue. And as the mayor, my inbox for the mayor's mailbox is most filled with issues about the Kaipara roading network, and it's these unsealed roads that take most of that noise and heat. So I just applaud all the work that the team has done in shifting the dial here. I look forward to there being a report and a briefing come through about what all of this means for Kaipara people, so that we can succinctly explain to all of the people, here's the shift that all of this courageous piece of project has contributed to the lives of ordinary Kaipara people who are out there trundling around on these unsealed roads, because they are our as I said, the very fabric of and density of our Kaipara network. It's how we connect our people. So I congratulate again all of the team here, and thank everyone for getting us safely to the end of this important project. So thanks to everyone. Ngā mihi nui. Thank you. Councillor Delavaris Woodcock, seconding statements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You pretty much said it all. And all I can say is I look forward to the NTA building on this strong foundation, or should I say pavement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any further statements from elected members here? No further statements. Sorry, maybe it was because I spoke too much, really. Taken all the oxygen out of the room. Right, thank you. Right, we're putting this to the vote now on the noting of the Unsealed Road Network report, and congratulations again to the team here. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Congratulations, team. Right, sorry, moving on here to the next item, which is the Kai Water Irrigation Project update. So I'm seeking a mover for this item. I'll move. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wilson-Collins, thank you, and Councillor Vincent seconding that. Thank you. And we have Eros Foschieri to speak to us today.
Everyone can hear me and see me well? Perfect. Okay, so as discussed last month, a planting plan has been attached to a draft of the planting plan has been attached to the report for your feedback. Pending obviously the feedback, will change the planting plan and amend, so we'll resubmit this next month for final approval. What has been proposed, as you can see, is sunflower and squash. Any feedback on this, essentially?
Councillor Vincent. So I tell you what, do you want to take the report as a whole, elected members, or do you want to take it site 1 and then site 2 for discussion? I think we'll go with site 1 and then site 2. Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering, there's been a lot of talk in the media lately about the prospects of industrial hemp for production. I just wonder, would that be such a dopey idea for here?
I can only, so apologize, agriculture is not my field, as you guys know. So what I can say, I will bring back to the to the to Northern Inc. that is preparing the planting plan. And what I've been told essentially is the focus this year will be to just actually differentiate what can be grown with or without water. So the reason of the sunflower and the squashes are they are irrigation intensive. So lack of water will be able to show the difference. That is kind of the aim of these two crops. So I don't know if it's the hemp is within this kind of thinking, but I will bring back and let you know.
It may be that it is more of a dryland crop than there could be problems with irrigation from the little bit that I've heard with it. But I just thought, well, you know, I thought that Northern was well known for its growing conditions for dope. So I thought that perhaps there would be an opportunity there to turn it to something of a industrial scale business. That's all. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Weddy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, my comments, Eros, on the Northern Link plan. I think from the plan, the way I read it, it looks as though we might have learned a few lessons from the first attempt. First of all, it's quite clear now from the plan that the aim of the exercise is to find out whether irrigation, in fact, improves crop yield. And that wasn't very well established, I don't think, in the first attempt. The two products that you've sorted, there's two things that I see as good. One of them is that both of them have got established markets, and squash market in Japan has been a well-established market for New Zealand squash over quite a long period of time. And we've got a very high reputation for quality coming out of New Zealand with that product. And secondly, so that we've got markets already established, and secondly, we've got people who are experienced in growing both those products offering support to these trials, which and even as much as giving quality seed to be used in the trial. So I think this is starting to look like a more professionally prepared experiment and trial plan, which I didn't see like this in the first attempt. So I'm hopeful that it's been better planned, and probably some of the criticism that's been levied at the first attempt has been taken on board and put together in a much more cohesive manner. So I think that's well done to those who have been involved in that, particularly Northern Link. And I rather hope that we'll be able to see much better results at the end of this second season's trial. So thank you. That's going in the right direction, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Curnow.
Kia ora, Mayor, thank you. Yeah, I'm thinking about last year when the minimal amount of crop that we did manage to produce was distributed amongst the community, and that worked well. I'm just wondering, just the one thing I'm not sure in this plan is what would we do with all the sunflowers and sunflower seeds, and sort of what's the plan at the end? And I know that I'm hoping that it demonstrates that we use water, we grow lots of great sunflowers. What do we do with them at the end?
Okay, so there's another thing we'll bring back, obviously, but from a understanding is the seed will maybe supply to this industry, and see that to be for the seed component. All the rest is for animals. So we can probably brings around and say if there is any farmer around that needs this kind of product, then I'm sure there will be a market for that in Kaipara. We'll probably specify in the planting plan or some way of in the execution plan what will be the output and where this will go.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, just so we actually understand. Yeah, it all helps to build that knowledge of if somebody was to do this is what you can do with the end result. Yeah, with squash, obviously you can sell it at a market or whatever, but with the sunflower seeds it's just a little bit more involved in how do you process it, where does it go, what does it become? Yeah. Okay. If that could just be thought about, that would be helpful.
Of course.
Thank you. Councillor De La Varas Woodcock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hello, Eros.
Councillor De La Varas Woodcock, could you
thank you
please turn off
for
your
your
camera?
report. My question is, sorry, is that better?
It's very.
Any better?
Oh, wait. Your bandwidth's caught up. Can you
Any
please?
better at all?
Yes, that's much better now. Your bandwidth is caught up without the camera. Thank you. Yes, you're sounding clear now. Thank you, Councillor De La Varas Woodcock. Please start your question again from commence encore à zéro. Thank you.
So I would like to talk to my husband Doug about application of water to squash. From what I know, powdery mildew can be a problem, and squash for sale to the Japanese was grown a lot in Potala Peninsula by many growers supplying the Japanese market in the early 90s. And then Tonga came in and substituted the supply for the Japanese with a cheaper price. So the Japanese actually give out all the seed. They know exactly who's growing it. But I would like to have the opportunity to canvass the growers that I know about squash and feed that back in before you put in your final choice of which crops to grow in the second planting season. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor De La Varas Woodcock. And I was just going to add exactly the same thing, because in the early 1990s, Kaipara District and north of Kaitaia was producing as much squash for export as Gisborne was. And following the Kobe earthquake in 1995, there was a 94-95, there was a reset which occurred across those two seasons. And so one of the hallmarks of your Kaipara Kai project, not the Kai Water project, but the Kaipara Kai project, was that we have a Kaipara Kai advisory group, which was put together for the foundation of that project. And that advisory group includes people who were involved with the squash industry in Kaipara 30 years ago. And they have intimate knowledge of how to grow it and all of the cultural aspects required for it exactly and precisely. So Councillor De La Varas Woodcock is quite correct about the disease risk from powdery mildew if there is excess moisture with squash. So that's just one of the many factors. So I would say that the project here, the Kaipara Kai water project, needs to connect with the Kaipara Kai project, actually, because the Kaipara Kai project had the brains in-house about this knowledge, and there's a gap here. There's certainly a missing link here. So that does need to be brought forward, please. And also I have a question, and so I would say this, that it's I'm looking particularly at the chart on page 5 of their report. This is 56 of the overall agenda for today, where we're seeing for the first time these crops laid up on the calendar, and the week by week calendar. And look, I absolutely applaud the visual tool that is. So thank you for that. One of the intents of the water use study, if you like, is to try to grow things out of season. with the water? How can we extend with Kaipara's sunny, warm climate? But if you add water, how can you grow extra things than you would be growing normally? So it's not here about proving that squash can be grown, but it's more about going, well, we can go early, we can go late. Those are the additional benefits that we need to talk to regarding irrigation here. So I applaud the work that's done here with the thinking, and I say I believe that there's further thinking yet to be done in order to say, how do we better apply water in the times of the year when there is no water to give a step change beyond something that can happen in anyone's field with no irrigation, because that's another whole level of thinking. But we need to be at the real pointy end here, focused on the irrigation idea, because this is where the lead of this work comes, not just in general industrial complexities of thousands of tons of squash going to Japan, because growers know how to do that already. So that's what my, if you like, my question really is, for Eros is, are you comfortable to take that back to the team, please, regarding, again, extending the shoulders and focusing on irrigation rather than just here's anything to grow?
Yes, I will bring back to the team as well, also expand on that knowledge and try to get Kaipara water involved. So these are kind of the two action I get from you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification here? No further questions. Thank you. Councillor Wilson-Collins, statement as the lead here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think that you've raised some really good points there about what the purpose of this project is, and I trust Eros will be going back to the team to communicate that, and so that we have some actual substantial results that come out of this testings. This water project, yeah, I feel that there seems to be a misalignment throughout this journey with this water project of what the council's expectations are from the results and how the project's actually being run. So just looking forward to getting that sorted so that we have some meaningful results that we can go back to our community with. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I agree that one of the key objectives is to see just what the potential is for exploiting shoulder seasons between the main harvest periods, but also the possibility. The second one is the potential to increase yield for mainstream harvest. The other thing too, I suggest, like a lot of the focus has been about squash. I think there are some people who are also growing sunflowers in the area already who may have some expertise they could share. And if Eros would like to contact me outside the meeting, I can give him a name and a number that he could follow up on with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further statements? Look, quick statement from me is I'm very grateful to the work that Northern Inc. is doing here in trying to lead this work. I'm very keen for it to be as ambitious as it can possibly be. We have a substantial body of work already in the Kaipara Kai project, and we also have significant amounts of embedded knowledge in our local community. And so how to build on the shoulders of all of that should be the goal of this project, and not to replicate things that are done in the past, or not simply just to grow food, because the ambitions of the Kaipara Kai project and this Kai water project are much greater than simply growing food. So I applaud the developments that are happening here and look forward to seeing the next steps. Thank you. Any further statements? Councillor Wilson-Collins, closing statement? No closing statement? All right, thank you. So we're putting this item to the vote now, the noting of the Kai Water project. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. So at this point, we're going to adjourn the meeting for a 10-minute break, and we will resume with our next item, which is the Kaipara Wharves project update. So we'll resume at 10:55 a.m. Thank you. See you soon. Ka kite anō. All right, there's our quorum. Kia ora matata, welcome back everyone. And we'll pick up from where we were in the middle of the agenda for this externally funded projects committee meeting with the Kaipara Wharves project update. And I'm seeking a mover for this item. Thank you. Councillor Curnow, thank you. And a seconder here. Councillor Wills, thank you. Thank you. Leading this discussion, we have Eros Foschieri back. Thank you.
Kia ora again. Port Wharf. So we, as you've already report, we are about to award the contract. So there are a few negotiations with the contractor. Everything is going well. We plan to have an early blessing in early September and start construction early mid-September, immediately after. So it's all running as per plan. Yeah, so that is the status of the project. On a separate note, you will see on the report we're talking about the beach widening. We are treating this as a separate project and is led by NTA. And the moment there is a concept design underway to deal with that. So including the car park and the footpath. So aside of this project. We had some informative session on the 3rd of July on site with the community and iwi. There was the contractor manager there that replied pretty much all questions. So hopefully we get good reassurance that the job is going well. There was no actually any problem with that. So all on track.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Weddy, question for clarification.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Eros. Just looking at the diagrammatic representation of the project of the wharf. Obviously, at that part of the hedge, you've got a 2 metre tide between high and low tide, and obviously without a pontoon, you've got in that diagram that there'll be a walkway going down to enable the wharf to be used by boats coming up against it at low tide. Now, that obviously, you know, is going to make it very much more functionable, but it does pose the safety issues about what sort of treatment you're going to put on those steps to prevent them from becoming treacherously slippery in a very, very short space of time. An issue which I think was also a subject over at Pahi Wharf when that recent project was completed. So what are the plans to make that walkway going down to the lower levels to be used at low tide something that won't end up becoming a safety issue?
Okay, so these are kind of the details of the design I'm not involved with, but I will bring back to the team and give you an answer next week. I'm sure these guys have thought about that. Generally speaking, there are some or net or some sort of material that we can put on top, but this is kind of the detail side of things. So I will give you an answer in the next meeting and make sure that this has been considered in the project. It's not a major game changer in the project, so anything that has not been considered can be easily retrofitted.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Perno, and then Councillor Wills.
Kia ora, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Eros. Just wondering about there's a comment in the report about Mana Whenua doing an addendum to the cultural impact assessment. Is there any indication what that pertains to? What their concerns are, or yeah?
I think this was more relative to the change in location. So the resource consent has been granted. So I'm assuming that all the process going through and the right consultation has happened. I will check again with the team what that is really up. What is. but also engagement has been done on site on the 3rd of July with Manafenuadi. So I will double check internally what that statement referred to.
Okay,
And
thank
bring
you.
back to you if there is any issue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wills, question.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, hi. Regarding this design that's in this document, is that the design that was presented with the walkway at the harbour side? Was that the design that was presented at the last two meetings? Can you confirm that?
I think that drawings or that representation is that what has been consulted on site, has been presented on site. I don't know. Yeah, so this is what we presented on site at the last consultation round.
Because the previous ones had actually had that walkway down the side rather than across the front.
Okay, the walkway.
Sorry, Councillor Wills.
Yeah, what exactly?
Can you please explain in clearer words what you mean?
Okay, Councillor Wiki asked the question, without a pontoon to.
Oh, sorry. So you're talking on the steps, actually,
Yes,
on
yes,
the sorry, I thought you meant at the landward end of
no, beg your pardon, on the harbour
construction. So that's why, yeah, clarification. Thank you. So you're talking at the head of the actual wharf where it's in the ocean. That's what you're talking to, and how the steps go down into the sea. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
My question around that is that as it was, and it's not a trick question, as it confirmed to public, because I've seen other iterations of this where it goes on the side and there's actually a uninterrupted frontage to the harbour.
So this is what at the moment is under has been contracted out, and this is what we're intending to construct. I will double check with you because I'm not sure if that is the same representation, but that is what has been recently presented to public. So I will come back to you if there is any deviation to that. But there has been, the way I'm aware of, there is no change to the contract or anything. So there must be if there is, must be an issue between the two drawings. But this is what always been pursued.
So if I can shed some light here, the design as we see it here is what we have been receiving and working on for the last few months now, with the steps going down inside the head of the wharf. Today's the first time we're actually seeing that rendered in 3 dimensions, because it was certainly confusing to me how those steps were going to look, just based on a we'll call it a two-dimensional bird's eye, just straight down view. But in this case, where we've got this kind of oblique side on view, you can actually see how those steps would work. So the earlier versions with floating pontoons, that was way earlier in the project, and my understanding is that was had been abandoned because of the current. The tidal current coming in and out, and that it would be too damaging for the floating aspects of a pontoon, let alone the cost, but actually just very, very challenging there. So so Eros, does that line up with your understanding here?
Yeah, that is correct. So the pontoon has been discarded at the beginning because the structure needs to be the current and the strength of the COVD, and this was the other option, and just the option that has been selected moving forward.
My question had nothing to do with pontoons. My question was, as the mayor has talked about, is the walkway, and this is the first time it's been represented other than from an aerial perspective, and that's why I asked this question. If moving on from that, there's a lot of this document refers to the widening of the entranceway to the beach and making it into a project. In an informal discussion I had with the manager for STF, he's going to have a 24-ton digger on site, and he only saw it as a matter of a couple of hours work. Why are we not just asking for that as part of not necessarily a favour, but a small variation, rather than turning it into a major project with all the attendant costs that come with it? Why can't we do this low key? I mean, I run my own diggers, so it's only probably about 4 hours work. Why do we have to have NTA involved and everybody else have an opinion rather than just getting it done, please?
So the matter there is the STF are expert pontoon or structure contractor. They're not expert in excavation. That area is high, and we got high mobile sand. So the risk of to have a not expert contractor in this specific job to start cutting the bank in on a beach may comes down to something that we're not expecting. So we are trying to make sure that any job there, especially in this sensitive area, is not is done properly. So we're not trying to re-engineering or try to overkill the project, if we want to put like this, but we want to make sure we got our due diligence while we're doing the job down there. So that is the reason why we're not getting the digger right straightforward and just start cutting the bank.
Yeah. My next question, I'm just raising concerns as a local down there. The funding that's been gained for the car park under the TIF, how is that going to be tied into this project, please? That $160,000 or $80,000 is it? Who's going to be involved in that decision on how to use that funding and how it ties in with this project, please?
For the exact reason we had the funding, we decided to split the project. Otherwise, we'll have a confused project. So the wharf will be running separate with its own funding for that reason. And we have a separate project that is the funding the car park, the beach access, widening, and the footpath as one project in itself. And we will use as much as we can the synergy and working within the two projects. So if, for example, we have a digger there to use for the two project, but the funding at the moment sit with the NTA, and the design is to see what will be the budget required to do the car park, the beach access opening, and the footpath together with the money that we've got.
Yeah, my question's around the benefit you could get out of those two projects running more or less simultaneously with heavy machinery. For example, STF wants to put those piles, stack them in that current car park, which would then interfere if the TIF funding was to be trying to do any work on the car park at the same time. So I assume there's some coordination there between the two projects to try and maximise the benefit for the council.
Exactly that. So the two PMs are in, or the two PM for the two different projects are in contact, and they're working together to make sure the two projects are running well together.
Yeah, and my last question, thank you. And my last question, thank you for your patience. We get told that the stuff from South America is on the water, and I think the words used are some or parts. But can you please confirm in simple yes and no how far away that stuff is? Because a month ago this project was going to start in August. The construction company told me that it wouldn't start till September, and now you're informing us that the blessing won't happen until mid-late September, which suggests a shift possibly even into October before a start date. Can you please tell me what stage we're at with regard to the materials arriving on site?
So the material is in New Zealand. It's here. So they need to be treated, but the material is here. And just correcting here, the blessing will be early September, not end of September. So the construction is supposed to start, I believe, the 10th of September or year there. So the blessing need to be before then. So blessing early September, hardwood in New Zealand is here. And yeah.
And one very last question. Thank you everybody for your patience on this project, but it's still been hanging out there for several years now. You said that you haven't signed the agreement yet with STF or the contract. We've had them appear in public and talk to the public as if they are the contractors, and we've gone out as if the contract's in place. I know that STF are well aware of our time frame for potentially losing the money. What's holding that final documentation up when we went to the public with them a month ago.
So these are the detail of principal requirement of the pontoon. Oh, sorry, of the structure. And so, like the walkways, that there are some final detail we are trying to try to confirm with the contractor, because in the past, previous project manager KDC has agreed on deviation to this principal requirement. So our consultant has done that, and today we'll have a meeting with STF to confirm those details and close the contract. It's not that the contract itself or the design is wrong. We are tweaking the details so we can lock the contract, tweak those details in. And we're all aware, both consultant KDC and as well the contractor, that the contract need to be awarded by the end of this week to make sure we start on the 1st of September.
Thank you very much for your, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? I have a question for clarification. Eros, I'll call it the oblique version, or the three-dimensional kind of map, the artist's impression of how the wharf is going to look. I assume this has been developed, the image has been developed by someone a long way away. But I don't know who has developed it, but I would really appreciate it if they could take another look, please, at this picture, because it's unhelpful, because the perspectives change all over the place with the image, and it looks like the ramp is either on a slope or the front end as it hits the ocean is tilting into the sea, and it's also too short. And so the if you like, the artist's impression notion is you go, this is a creative expression of what the wharf may look like. And the thing is that we all value images which help to show and lead and encourage people and give them confidence about what the project is going to be. And certainly this image here is curious. Do you think it would be possible to get a revised version of that three-dimensional kind of image to be more helpful for us all? Is that possible? Yeah, I'm sure. So nowadays they got the model, is just questioning of just tweaking the angle of where the photo is taken on the model. So definitely can be done. So I will talk internally to the team and making it look the same length as the image, because if we come back to Councillor Wills's view and earlier comments about the entranceway onto the beach, we might in one image just need to be able to go, the new world's going to look like this from a seagull eye view, rather than a Dali-esque kind of slightly distorted artist rendering where nothing quite lines up. Thank you. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is relatively down in the detail in terms of reference to the surface to be used for the steps. It's come up also in relation to the pave wharf. With this, it may be outside the scope of the project, but I'm concerned that we come to this solution, a cheaper solution, but it implies ongoing maintenance. How are we going to budget for that? Because I don't think we have a budget for that. Are we going to have one? What are we doing about depreciation? Yes.
Hi, Mark. This is more finance questions, so that is not totally my area. My part is to design and build these things. I will pass internally and to see where budget is allocated and how this will be financed in the future. In terms of maintenance, so and the design, this has been done for so the hardwood, for example, is the best material we can get. So this is what was a long-term long-lasting design, long-lasting structure, sorry. and all the timber rail at the top is done with pine, so it's easy replaceable. So that consideration has been brought into the design and into the construction. The finance, apology, is not. We'll talk internally and we'll bring back to you about this.
If you could, that would be good. I realise it's perhaps out of the scope of this project as such, but in terms of thinking about a sustainable approach to these capital projects, we do need to think about the long term. And if anything's going to be locked in as part of whether there's a management plan for maintenance or whatever, I'm not sure. But I wouldn't like it to end up just like, say, the Tunapai Wharf, for instance, or the Whakapirau Wharf, or as a great thing while it was new, but then it deteriorates for lack of maintenance. Thank you. That was a speech, wasn't it, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, it was. But
sorry.
But we appreciate your statement there. Thank you. That's the first of the statements here. Thank you. Are there any further questions for clarification? No further questions. All right. Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Curnow for actually what will now be the second of our statements, but for Councillor Curnow for the official first statement here. Thank you, Eros.
Thank you, Mayor. My statement will be quite short and sweet on this. It is good to see that we now have a design and that we have a location and we have the community relatively on board and we have contractors about to be signed up. This has been an extraordinarily long and torturous journey to get to this point, and I'm really delighted to see that we are about to start actually putting holes in the ground and building stuff. So yeah, congratulations to the team on getting it to this point.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Wills, as the seconder, your statement, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I confirm I'm looking forward to this project actually commencing and then being completed, hopefully by this Christmas. It's been an interesting experience. I don't want to be negative about something, but having a two-part process where we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars getting a consultant to design a wharf and then have the construction company along and say, well, actually, you can't build it for your money, and then we have to redesign it, has been quite a learning curve. And I'll take that away, that splitting the project apart like that, and there's been no comeback on the original design and then hundreds of thousands of dollars that we spent with them, and they've been able to walk away with no liability or responsibility. So a learning curve as far as business management goes in this environment. But that's quite negative. But I want to be positive is that apart from a few hiccups, the community as a whole is looking forward to this construction. And as long as there's no variations and deviations from the plan as now presented, we have the majority of people supporting it and looking forward to it, both within the local community and in the Marae attendees. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there further statements? Quick statement from me is I'm looking forward to next month us being able to say, look, we're about to, in a few days' time, have the blessing for the construction. So I'm very much looking forward to next month's externally funded project meeting on this. So because we are closing in rapidly on this, I'm noting very much the conversation about the steps, noting what the people of Pahi said with their request for, if you like, a stainless steel or metal grating for the steps instead of wooden steps with an anti-skid topping. But anyway, that's in a design detail that will be coming to us later. But noting that this is a substantial engineering construction in a really extreme location, and I can't wait. So get into it, everybody. Yeah, kia kaha. So are there further statements? No further statements. All right. Thank you. we're putting this to the vote now. Oh, sorry, Councillor Curnow, do you want do you want a closing statement? No? All right, putting this to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Right, so we're moving on to our next item, which is the Dargaville to Te Kopuru Stop Bank item. So we also have Eros Foschieri speaking to this item for us. I'm seeking a mover and a seconder here. A mover, Councillor Wilson Collins, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Wills, thank you. Eros.
Kia ora. So to go for a stop bank, so we got two stream of work at the moment. One is the resource consent. The resource consent application is pretty much 95%. So we're aiming to lodge the consent by the end of this month. The detailed design as well is underway, and again in parallel will be completed again in the next 2 or 3 weeks. What we're doing, so last meeting I told you that there were a few landowners that were opposing or not favorable, would say, of the project. Our PMs have been on site with also our Iwi relationship to discuss with the landowners and bring them on board. So this is still ongoing, but the kind of the number are dropping in terms of opposing. So especially it was more like a communication issue rather than just actually an issue with the project itself. So we're working on that and it's progressing. The last things in terms of procurement, so we decide to, we propose to go ahead with the trial. So we are selecting a 500-meter section where we will get a contractor to do the job. Obviously, the length of the stop banks is 10 kilometers, so we're trying to find a balance between the design and the risk. The stop banks is different in different location, and pushing too much on the design and its cost of the consultant will. So we're essentially trying to find a balance between the design and the cost. This trial will allow us to have a certainty or better knowledge of how the work will need to be carried out, and at the end of the trial will extend the work based on the trial outcome. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Withy, question for clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Eros, we know that we've got from the Infrastructure Reference Group $3.5 million towards this project. Obviously, you're going to do the trial to try and finalise design, and then once you've got the final design, you're going to be able to get a better indication of whether or not the work can be done for $3.5 million, or what the total cost of that project would be, and then we've got to think about how we fund the shortfall. But when you give the brief to the design consultants, are you saying to them, we've got $3.5 million, how can we do this project for this amount of money? Or are you basically giving them a blank piece of paper? Because this is going to very much provide the direction for them as to what options they will build into the design. If they've got a blank sheet of paper, they'll probably give you a Rolls-Royce one rather than the budget Ford that Kaipara District Council normally looks to.
So what we told the consultant is, this is the budget, you can't go over. We don't have more money than that. Obviously, this was a $10 million request to MB, so we are working backward on what we can do with 3.5 million. The exact reason of this trial is to find a balance between how much we need to start detailing, because I don't know, you probably have been there, but the stop banks there are some areas that there's a dense bush it's really hard even to get there. Stop banks are thin in some areas, some are high. So to have a detailed design that de-risk the project will cost us much. At the other side, if we don't do detailed design, we will have risk put to council during construction, because we don't know exactly the extent of the work. So the exact balance of this trial is to find a middle point where we're not detailing too much and we've got confidence that the contractor can do the job within the budget. So, that is kind of the aim of this trial. And
Okay.
with you, yeah, so hopefully that responds.
Thank you. Well, certainly, I certainly support the concept of doing a trial on something like this, because that trial will give you a lot of information. That's right. Good work. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor De La Varas Woodcock. Question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can everyone hear me?
If you turn your camera off, just it is a bit shaky. Thank you. Thank you.
So my question is for Eros, about the ownership of the stock bank. Were you able to get clarification on whether there's an existing paper road along that riverbank?
So from I think this was a question that you mentioned probably last month or 2 months ago. Apology. So that has been confirmed. We don't have any paper road, so hasn't been found from the design. So not sure where is this paper road is, or so if you got any map we can show later after this meeting, you can forward me any information, but the team hasn't found anything on that. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? So I have a question, Eros, and it's about your the 500-meter trial that will be done in one section of 500 meters, not 500 meters in different types of locations.
no, the idea is overall to find the, would put like that, the trickiest section, the hard one to build. So we try to test the worst case scenario.
Okay.
So
Okay, thank you. So I would expect this is a bit like the discussion we were having earlier regarding the Mangawhai shared path. There's a level of interest by elected members here and for transparency with the public about exactly the detailed bits of whatever is being proposed, that we're just being really transparent about that, where those locations may be or not be. So that would be helpful for next time, if you wouldn't mind, to say here's where the trial's going to go on this piece of the map. Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? No further questions. Thank you, Eros. Councillor Wilson-Collins, statement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this project pans out. I commend the staff for the initiative of doing a trial first. So that's really awesome. And we'll just have to wait and see how that pans out. And also, yeah, just I know I said it last month, I think, but just the acknowledgement of those people who are trying to work with the public to get the project on board. I think they've probably got one of the toughest parts of the process to deal with. So yeah, just wishing them all the best with their dealings with everyone out there, and looking forward to seeing some progress, hoping it all just comes together somehow. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wills.
Nothing to add. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there further statements? No further statements. We'll leave it there then. We're putting this to the vote now for the noting of this report. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Right. Moving on now to the Raupor upgrade item. Sorry. Councillor Curnow has her hand raised to be moving this. Thank you. And a seconder here. Councillor Vincent, thank you. Thank you. Eros.
so Rapo, as you've seen on the report, the consultant so we've done the geotechnical investigation, so we have real ground information, and the design that has been proposed come to significant number about what is the budget. So we have discussed that with the consultant, and they've just going back to previous comment, they have also looked at the barefoot design. So now we got obviously to diverge to two different costs, one from the barefoot and one from the consultant. So we have already arranged a meeting next week to go through the design and to with all party. It's called Widening engineering. So we'll be looking at opportunities to save money, opportunities to better build this, so we can see what is the optimal solution in the middle. After that, we'll be able to confirm the way forward on and cost essentially, and the way forward. For completeness, also we ask the consultant to look at an alternative, that is the Canal K, just in case the budget will result not sufficient, and is lower obviously, but still outside the budget allowed. So essentially we're looking for next week for this value engineering workshop, so we can, and also with the RAPO committee, so we'll have E&D. So we're trying to get all the party on board now. We've got all the information and confirm what will be the design and the way forward.
Thank you. Questions for clarification? Councillor Curnow.
Yeah, kia ora, thanks. I mean, I've obviously sent some extensive questions through already, but just for completeness, you know, for the meeting, can you sort of just go into a little bit more detail around what that value engineering sort of exercise will do? Because the difference between the barefoot quote and the consultant's quote is in many times, like 4 or 5 times the cost. So I'm really concerned that we've gone from one option to another, and yeah, even with a value engineering, how is that going to be bridged?
So that is the is the angle in engineering. We got from one side expert contractor, so they've done good work on RAPO for a long time, but not of this scale. From one side also we got a consultant that is expert in geotechnical and design work locally. The main constraint going down to the engineering level is around the foundation and the capacity of this structure to withstand 4 meter or 5 meter of water during a flood. So while the structure itself can stand on its own based on the strength, we also need to factor that these things will need to hold a massive load of water. So we want to confirm what barefoot essentially allowed that, and what the engineer allowed in to confirm the foundation. That will be the key item, floating or pile. Okay, so just basically speaking, that will be the key. The other is also the surrounding work, because it's not, you can imagine that this is not only just build concrete structure in the river, but there's the road access, there is training of the stream or coffer dam during the construction. So all these items are costs that will need to be included in the job. So we want to confirm what barefoot essentially has allowed in their price and what the consultant has allowed to come down. If we'll be able to go down to 2.5 million, I'm not sure, but that will be the the aim, obviously, to see if there is something feasible with that budget.
Thank you. So just a follow-up question, given that Barefoot had done a lot of their perspective on the value engineering, how come they weren't included in the consultant's design engineering approach? Because surely it would have made sense and would have been a reduced cost to council to include Barefoot in that process, as opposed to now we've ended up with 2 massively different views, and now we're having to sort of go back and sort of retrofit. Why were they not included?
So, okay, there are two considerations there. One is the design has been looked at by the consultant. So we have passed the design to the consultant. I agree with you that should have happened. That meeting should have happened last month. Unfortunately, we had significant turnover in the project team, so that kind of missing the PM, the previous PM, and moving to the next PM has cost us that month. So that is why. So now we have a new PM on board, and that is the aim, that we will do this design as soon as possible. So it's not an excuse, but that is the difficulty that we experience with this project in changing PMs. But at least what we can tell you is we consider the designer has considered that. So they haven't come out with a fancy new design, but they've looked at that, the barful structure and that.
And have they, would you say that there have been additional costs incurred by not sort of working with Barfoot from the beginning, and now we're ending up having to sort of go back and, as I say, retrofit? Would there have been additional costs involved in that?
The additional cost, in my view, is this workshop. So 3 or 4 hours, say 6 hours for the consultant, and maybe other 6 or 7 to revise the design. The good thing of not having Barfoot probably at the beginning is we got an independent view, because when you start putting people together in the same room, you might affect the view in a good and a bad way. So we have minimal additional cost. I can't say that there is much, so there is nothing, but they're not of the magnitude that we are really worried about in this kind of project. So
Okay.
yes.
All right, I'll look forward to the outcomes of that workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if this is an Eros question or someone else, but assuming that it was going to be way more expensive than we've got budget for, what are the implications of not proceeding with this project? I mean, I would like to think that we were taking a long-term sustainable view. Is it necessary that this work proceeds in order to provide a sustainable future for the community in the farming area of Ruawai Raupo?
So if the option will be not going ahead, we'll have to have obviously a discussion with MB around the reallocation of this funding with Kaipra. So how the money has been given to us in the contract is one lump of 6 million, 2.5 for this project and 3.5 for the Kopuro. So there may be, but again I say maybe here, because we need to have negotiation with MB on that this money may be allocated to the Kopuro, or we can find another project, and this what was the check on Canal K to reallocate locally in Raupo for another project. Again, this is really pending the value engineering and discussion with MB on moving the project around. The money around.
Yeah, that's good as far as it goes. I'm just wondering, what does the future hold for Raupo Ruawai if this project doesn't proceed?
So if this doesn't,
yeah,
is that a bit out of scope, Mr. Mayor?
I would say, Councillor Vincent, that's an awesome, epic question. I think it's significantly out of scope for the detail of the project that we're talking about here today, but it's a very, very important question for a different forum than this. So you're right. So the question will need to be held for another forum. Thank you.
I suppose where I was leading to, Mr. Mayor, that do we need to consider, if this is deemed to be essential for the future of that area and the state highway network and so on, do we need to be considering a targeted rate, or to be able to raise a loan to make up the shortfall?
So again, I would say, Councillor Vincent, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, because based on what we've heard from Eros, there's a key meeting that's taking place next week, which will help to illuminate what the path is, or may not be, or the options may or may not be into that future. And there's a long way to go on any decision making, further subsequent decision making, such as targeted rates or whatever, all of which are always options for communities and councils. But in this case, we just need to stay focused in the current, with the current tools in the current project and its current goals and intentions until such point as that examination for now is resolved. So yeah, but it's certainly very much a watching brief here and a changing story, yeah, which is inconclusive at present, which is what
Thank
we're
you
hearing
for your
from us.
forbearance.
Okay, thank you. Councillor De La Varis Woodcock, question for clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is also probably out of scope or peremptory from in advance of the meeting coming up ahead to try and address the shortfall for the Raupo project. But I would like to insert a note that perhaps if the project is to be stopped and not go ahead by MB's decision, that the team ask if the Kaihu Valley Trail could be a recipient for the transferal of those funds.
So so that's an interesting statement, Councillor De La Varis Woodcock. Again, I go back to what we just said with Councillor Vincent. We'll cross that bridge as we come to it. And I would say again, and Sue Davidson may be able to back us up here, MB has been very, very reluctant to take money from one project and give it to another, as we saw with Poto phase 2 sealing, that we tried to get that money supporting other aspects of our story, and they took it all away. So like I say, those principles don't seem to be at work, but it's an interesting idea that you raise. So thank you for that. Do you have a further question for clarification?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's great. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are there any further questions for clarification from elected members here regarding the Raupo upgrade? No further questions. Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Curnow for a leading statement here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll keep this short. The situation with the Raupo drainage network and many of our other land drainage networks is that those on the ground know these networks best. There are literally generations of knowledge that are held in the minds of those who are involved in those committees, and we ignore those at our peril and to our cost. And I think a classic example here is that we have ignored that knowledge and ended up with a solution that is the gold-plated solution to something that really doesn't need to be there. And I give an example that I'm advised that the consultant suggested a stainless steel gate, but those on the ground know that the gates that you use, whether they're stainless steel or not, never last that long because they get bombarded by logs and things like that. So you don't need a gate that lasts for 100 years because it's not going to last for 100 years anyway. So, and a stainless steel gate is approximately 4 times the cost of a steel gate that is coated in an epoxy resin. So there's knowledge on the ground that we ignore at our peril. And when we go to consultants who, Kaipara has a long history of getting somewhat captured by consultants. And I worry that what has happened here is that consultant capture. And the end result of that is that we could end up not delivering something which, if we went with the on the ground, the guys who know the system best solution, we could deliver. But if we go with the consultant option, we may not be able to deliver. And these, with the community in Ruawai, these are fundamental kind of existential questions, as Councillor Vincent leads on to, that will arise from those decisions. So I am deeply concerned by the fact that we could be on the cusp of turning down a project, which then the community of Ruawai, who we've started doing adaptive planning work, come back and say, we need to do this. And we are going to be the council that turned around and said, oh, well, our consultant said it was going to be too expensive, even though the guys on the ground say we can do it. And it really concerns me that we've sort of spent so much time ending up in this position. And I'm really hopeful that the value engineering project that is about to happen will actually get us through this and get a bit of a sanity check and a reality into this that builds on the knowledge of the generations who have done this work and know how these drains need to run. So yeah, I wait and see.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that was a very eloquent speech by the Deputy Mayor. There is a vacancy going for Mayor too. I just thought I'd mention that. From my point of view, one of the key points you mentioned is that while the engineer just wants to get the thing built, it is indeed an existential question for the future of that area and the state highway network as well. So it is really important in its implications. Actually, to be honest, I'm quite surprised that there was only 5 meters of mud, because I'm aware that for the beef plant at Dargaville, they actually had to put piles down 30 meters to find solid ground. So yeah, that seems, mind you, that wasn't to build something that's going to hold back a wall of water. So, and I'm not an engineer. However, I certainly would tautoko what Anna has said, and I hope that this meeting coming up in the next week or so is going to produce a result which is practical and doable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there further statements? Quick statement from me is, yes, thank you, Councillor Curnow, for articulating it very, very clearly about the local embedded knowledge and the value of that. And I endorse entirely everything that Councillor Curnow and Councillor Vincent have just said. And I'm looking forward very, very much to a pragmatic response and a new clear direction coming out of that meeting that's proposed for next week. I'm sorry that meeting didn't take place last week, so it could be reported on for us now, because we certainly have a bump in the road right now, which everyone is taking note of. So best wishes to everyone with that important project, because the scale of what we are talking about with Raupo, as Councillor Vincent has perfectly alluded to, is more than just the footprint of the ratepayers of that area, because this is actually the road that connects Dargaville with the rest of New Zealand. So through Auckland directly. So this is substantial matter for Kaipara District and all the people here in the very, very centre of the place. So looking forward very much to seeing the outcomes of this next meeting that will be nothing to do with the elected members of this council on the screen. Yeah, but thank you to the team here. Councillor Curnow, closing statement, if you wish.
I think I've said everything I need to say at this point. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We're putting this matter to the vote now. The noting of this, all those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. So at this point, we move to our penultimate item, the externally funded projects financial overview. I'm seeking a mover for this item, Councillor Wethy, thank you, and a seconder here, Councillor Wilson-Collins, thank you. Eros.
Through the chair, I'll just jump in here about the finances for Eros.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
just
you.
because we're at the stage where we've been claiming quite a bit of money. If you look at page 92, you can see that the first two columns show the money that we've, the funding stream from Infrastructure Reference Group and the PGF funds. They total it's 18 million and 16 million, which is 34 million. And if you look along, the same chart shows you at the bottom of the amount we've claimed to date from MB is nearly 21 million. So, and the main outstandings for money still to be claimed are on the stop banks, Poto Wharf, Raupo upgrade, also on Kaihu Valley and the shared path. So, and we've actually just made recently some more claims for Kaihu Valley and the shared path, but that all adds up to nearly the 14 million difference. So we've been claiming all the monies we're entitled to as, you know, as efficiently as we can when we meet the criteria.
Thank you, Sue, for that explanation and for bringing us up to date there. So elected members, are there any questions for clarification here? Councillor Curnow and Councillor Wills, thank you.
Kia ora, Sue. Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick sort of more process question. And I seem to remember past reports, the RAG budget column has been used, but we haven't used it here. So I'm going to ask you to highlight, is there anything here that should be read, that we should be drawn attention to?
Not that I know of, Councillor Curnow. I think everything is good. We've been making the claims as we've been meeting the criteria. But you can see that we have spent money in Raupo upgrade project that we, you know, 128,000 to date, that we obviously are not quite there yet before we can make a claim. So normally we'd have to make the investment first as a council, and then there's certain milestones that we have to meet along the way before we can claim. So there's a certain amount at risk if we don't meet those milestones.
And would there be a certain amount of risk? I'm just thinking about that Raupo upgrade one. We've spent money, and if out of the value engineering project it says, oh no, this is just not feasible financially, where do we sit there?
We might. That's correct. We'd probably have to have discussions with MB as to the funding, but that's the risk we take when we take government money.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wills.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Is Greg still online?
No, I don't think he is.
Okay, my question relates to Poto Road Phase 1. And I'm bringing it up here because it's the only time in this meeting that it's actually identified. So who can I speak to about the potential liability for the council?
Well, if you talk about it now, Councillor Wills, that's good. We'll either see if we can answer it, and we've got the project coordinator online, or else we'll take note of it for next time and send you an email.
My question is that I note that there was a request for increased funding from the contractor, but as a regular user of that road, where does the contractor's responsibility for the quality of it stop and the council's responsibility for maintaining it begin? Because travelling over it over the last few weeks, there's been a significant, I'll use that word, it's a slight exaggeration, deterioration in the surface in a number of areas. Is the contractor's responsibility still there to have maintained it to a standard, at least till we have to put the second seal on it?
Yes, my understanding is there'd be a defect period. So, and I don't think we're out of the defect period, but I'll make sure that Greg understands your concerns.
Well, I don't want to just be passed, because that's a major potential cost for us as a council to rectify the scabbing that's already taken place on a tar seal road that's only months old. And in particular, there's areas where the logging trucks are obviously turning into their workstations where they've ripped the surface well, I'm using the word significant, that's probably not a fair choice of word. It's damaging it to the point where I can see us having to fix something that we shouldn't have to fix this soon. So I actually want for the next meeting, please, somebody to come back and tell us where the liability at this stage lies and if the contractor is going to fix what's already happening, because potentially it could even be worse than it is now. And it is the scabbing on the surface particularly, and also the rocks that they put in for drainage along the sides after recent weather events have started to deteriorate. So my question is, where do we have to pick up the tab, and where can we expect the contractor to actually fix the job, please?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the defect period, but we will definitely come back to you on that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wills. Are there further questions for clarification? No further questions. All right. Thank you, Councillor Wethy. Statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I think with the addition of Sue's explanation, I think this summary gives us a good result for all the projects that are still under consideration. We've looked at them individually, and this just summarised them very nicely. So I think it's a good way to review the financial aspects of them. And yeah, thanks very much. Nothing else.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wilson-Collins.
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further statements from elected members here? No further statements. All right. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor Wills. Thank you.
Just following on from what I just talked about, the Poto Road, I just trust that the project teams assess these projects after their completion to ensure that not just at the time of sign-off, that we ensure that our liability is minimised for ongoing maintenance for all of those projects, because there was a significant amount of work done over the last couple of years. And I wouldn't like the incoming council to pick up liability that they don't need to. So I trust that the management and project team will at some point have a review like we've asked for in the past with some of the other projects that didn't quite come to fruition like we'd expected. I just hope that that's an ongoing aspect, that we can get some feedback just because they've finished theoretically and we've paid out. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further statements? Councillor Wethy, closing statement from you?
Nothing further. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. So we're putting the noting of the financial overview report to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, final item for today, Whānau, is the externally funded projects program overview. And so this is the calendar of what's happening. And so I'm seeking a mover for this item. Thank you. I will move this, and a seconder here. Councillor Wilson-Collins, thank you. So I'm going to say Eros here.
Yes, the problem, if you want to discuss any detail, I'm not going through every little project. I think that has been discussed through every project again. So if you got any question, I will take it essentially.
Councillor Wills, question.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question here is when is that calendar actually updated, because it doesn't match the individual project timelines, particularly with regard to the Poto Wharf timelines?
Yeah, this normal that is normal. So this agenda that comes to this meeting is normally 3 weeks old. So factory is getting updated realistically a month ago, more or less. So that is the delays we got in the reporting and what you see on the screen. So any change will update next week essentially for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just for clarity, so on page, I'm going to say the final page of the agenda here, it's page 99 in my worldview here, is that opening event for Poto Wharf is indicated, would therefore be indicated not as being at Guy Fawkes, but just prior to Christmas, which is what's in the report.
Yeah, exactly. And the start of work is in August.
Yeah.
What is construction commencement, obviously, is pretty much on track. Are we talking about? Yes.
Yeah, so you'd said that construction would begin on the 10th of September.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, project. Confusing August or September here. You're right.
Yes. Yeah. So you're right. Thank you. Good luck to construction in the silly season. Anyway, but it's important here regarding this overall overview of how all these projects fit together. Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification here? I have a question, which is why are there no Kai irrigation projects indicated in this timeline?
It's because we need to finalize the planting plan. So where that has been confirmed in August, we'll put that timeline in there. It's not that it's been there's nothing happening. It's just when the planting plan is confirmed, we'll put the exact timing of each planting and when this will occur, rather than just put the date.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you. Are there any further questions? No further questions. All right. Thank you, Eros. So statements here is it's good again to see the pattern of the work that's programmed here. There is still a lot going on in this work. This chart, as some of the projects have been completed and they disappear from it, becomes, if you like, smaller or less complex in its content. One of the challenges that we have is that there are still significant internal milestones inside projects, such as inside the Kaihu Valley Trail and inside the Mangawhai Shared Path work, or inside the Kai Water project, which are not indicated necessarily in this chart. So it would be good again to be, for transparency, showing the community where some of those milestones are as they are emerging here. For example, the Mangawhai Shared Path, and there's the construction commencement in phase 2. This now looks to be being different to what's in the chart here, because some of the stone wall work in advance of that is going to be being done now, and in fact you're talking about here the bridge for phase 2 of the Mangawhai Shared Path, and then the so on and so on and so on. So there are details that could be refined in the gift that this particular chart is, which is that it shows where the peaks and troughs and where the milestones are, so that the community has absolute clarity in sight. I think we're losing some of that clarity here now. And so, for example, May 23, construction complete and the opening event for the Kaihu Valley Trail, but it doesn't say which parts and exactly what all the milestones are for that, such as the Ahikiwi Bridge and so on and so on and so on. So I would like to see more, as there are fewer projects here, more detail in that. being provided here, but it is because it is a necessary and very helpful overview. Thank you. Councillor Wilson-Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I agree with that sentiment, that, yeah, some more detail would be helpful. But also just following on from Councillor Will's questioning, if there was any possible way of this overview being more up to date and more in line with the reports that come to us. Otherwise, it's actually pointless, because we're having to sift through the reports and actually find the correct dates for things. So yeah, if there was some way that process could be changed internally, so perhaps the reports are submitted and then the timeline is updated, that would be far more useful for everybody, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further statements? All right, a closing statement from me. There is still a lot going on here with all of these projects, and I congratulate all of the teams and our project management office for the work that's going on with these externally funded projects across this council. And this work talks to that. Thank you. So we're putting this to the vote now, the noting of the project overview. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, that brings us to the end of our agenda for today's Externally Funded Projects Committee meeting. As there are no further items, and we're just a few minutes after 12 o'clock, but I'm going to close the meeting now officially with a karakia. I thank everyone for your attendances today. And like I say, beaming in from all across the country, and it's been very good to have this check-in with everyone today. I'm sorry if my performance has been a bit off, but I'm actually in isolation right now with COVID. So it's a dark age. Anyway, we're closing now with a karakia, and thanks to everyone for all the great work that's going on here. Kia tau nā manaakitanga a te mea ngaro ki runga ki teina a tātou, kia mahia te hua makihikihi, kia toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi te araha, toi te reo Māori, ti hei Māori ora.